Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Friday, January 23rd, 2026. And I have to be honest with you, looking at this stack of documents and reports you've sent over, I'm having a hard time processing it as news.
I can see why.
I mean, if you try to pitch the events of this week as a movie script to a Hollywood studio,
Yeah.
they would probably kick you out of the office.
Oh, they absolutely would. Would they tell you the script is a mess? It's too crowded, the stakes are absurdly high, and the cast of characters just doesn't make sense together.
Not at all. You've got tech moguls, spies, and presidents all in the same scenes.
Exactly.
So we have spies meeting in the desert, billionaires pitching sci-fi cities in the Alps, and the geopolitical map being redrawn in real time. So we aren't just going to read headlines today.
No.
We're going to treat this deep dive like a screenplay breakdown. We're walking through the scenes of what we're calling the movie of 2026.
And to keep us grounded, because as wild as all this sounds, it is real life, we're pulling from a pretty serious list of sources. We've got intelligence reporting from Just Security and Reuters, environmental data from Earth.org, and then that big picture analysis from the World Economic Forum and Lazard.
And Lazard actually gave us the log line for this movie.
Yeah.
Now, in a screenplay, the log line is that one sentence that explains what the movie is really about. So what's the core theme driving all this chaos in 2026?
It's a concept they call transactional hegemony.
Okay, let's unpack that immediately. That sounds like a heavy academic term. What does that actually mean for regular people?
It sounds complex, but the idea is actually very simple. For the last 80 years, largely since World War II, we lived in what was called a rules-based order. You follow the treaties, you respect the alliances, and you get security.
Right, there were rules.
There were rules. Transactional hegemony means that era is effectively over. Now, the world works like a business deal. Sovereignty is negotiable. Security is a subscription service. And alliances aren't about shared values or history. They're about what you can pay up front right now.
So it's the art of the deal, but applied to the entire planet.
Precisely. It's a world where nothing is sacred and everything has a price tag. And that theme, well, it sets up our opening scene perfectly.
Scene 1, the geopolitical thriller. We open with a visual of a closed door in Abu Dhabi in the UAE.
This is a classic quiet room scenario. No press, high security, probably soundproof walls. We're looking at the first trilateral peace talks between the United States, Russia, and Ukraine since the war began nearly 4 years ago.
The casting here is what really caught my eye. Usually when you hear about peace talks, you picture diplomats and suits people trained to speak politely. But on the Russian side, you have Admiral Igor Kostyukov.
Right, the head of the GRU. That is Russian military intelligence.
So why does Putin send a spy chief instead of a diplomat? That feels like a very specific choice.
Oh, it sends a huge message. It says the time for talking is over. Diplomats negotiate wording. The GRU negotiates assets. Kostyukov is there to discuss hard security, troop lines, intelligence capabilities, surrender terms.
Not international law.
Not at all. It changes the temperature of the room immediately from negotiation to ultimatum.
And sitting across from him, you have the Ukrainians, Rustam Umerov
Yeah.
from National Security, and their intel chief, Kirilo Budanov. But the American delegation, I mean, this is where the screenplay writer got really creative.
It's not who you'd expect.
It's not the Secretary of State. It's President Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner.
And this scene actually has a prequel scene that explains why they're there. Before they even landed in Abu Dhabi, Witkoff and Kushner pulled a late-nighter in Moscow. They had a 4-hour meeting with Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin.
4 hours is a long time for a check-in.
It's a massive amount of time for a head of state to give to envoys. The Kremlin released a statement afterward calling it useful in every respect.
Which in diplomatic code usually means we made progress on a deal.
It absolutely does. But now that they are all in the UAE, the conflict of this scene revolves around the MacGuffin, the object everyone is fighting over.
The Donbass region.
Correct. President Zelensky actually sent a WhatsApp message to journalists about this, which is a modern twist in itself, saying the question of Donbass is key.
But isn't that just a stalemate? I mean, Russia occupies it, Ukraine wants it back.
Yeah.
That's been the plot for 4 years.
It's more complicated now. The Kremlin's stance is that there is no deal without solving the territorial issue. Essentially, they are demanding Ukraine withdraw troops from the eastern regions that Russia claims legally.
Even the parts Russia doesn't actually control physically.
Yes. Wait, so they want Ukraine to retreat from their own land to meet a line on a map that was drawn in Moscow?
That is the demand. And the leverage they're using to get it is brutal. It's January, it's winter. Reuters is reporting that Russian strikes on energy infrastructure have created a humanitarian catastrophe.
I saw those reports from the private power producers in Ukraine. They're saying the system is on the brink of total collapse.
People are freezing. So the pressure on Zelensky to cut a deal, any deal, is immense. It's a race against the cold.
And that desperation is what drives the transactional nature of this meeting. It's not about justice or what's right. It's about survival. The screenplay asks, how much land is warmth worth?
That is a chilling question. Let's cut to scene 2, a very different setting. We're leaving the desert and heading to the snow. The boardroom drama in Davos, Switzerland.
The World Economic Forum. High security, snow-capped mountains, 5-star hotels, and the launch of something that sounds like it was ripped straight from a dystopian novel.
The Board of Peace.
The Board of Peace.
This is the big plot twist of the week. President Trump signed this body into existence in Davos. The pitch is that it's a group designed to resolve global conflicts, potentially sidelining the UN completely.
But unlike the UN, where you get a seat just by being a recognized country, this has a barrier to entry. It is a literal pay-to-play model. Sources are reporting that permanent membership requires a $1 billion contribution.
$1 billion to have a vote on world peace.
It creates a shareholder model for global security. If you pay, you get a say. And here is the dialogue that made me do a double take. Vladimir Putin stated that Russia is willing to pay the $1 billion if the U.S. unfreezes their assets to do it.
That is classic transactional behavior. I'll fund your peace project with the money you seized from me. But surely the traditional powers, Europe, the UK, they have to be pushing back on this.
Oh, the critics are panning it. France, the UK, Sweden, Norway, they all opting out. They see it as a shadow UN designed to undermine international law. And they are, fundamentally opposed to the idea of Putin sitting on a board of peace while the war in Ukraine is still raging.
So who's buying in? Who are the founding members?
Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Hungary, Argentina, and Belarus. It really represents a realignment. You have this bloc of countries that prefer the deal over the rules. They like the idea that influence is something you can purchase.
And speaking of deals, there was a subplot in this scene that we absolutely have to unpack, the Greenland deal. I feel like we've heard this rumor for years. It was a joke for a while, but this week it got real.
It got very real, and it fits the theme of transactional hegemony perfectly.
So walk us through the beat sheet here. The setup was that Trump threatened 10% tariffs on Europe, just a blanket tax on everything, and everyone was scrambling to figure out why.
It was leverage, pure and simple. By the end of the week, Trump and NATO chief Mark Rutte announced a framework deal. The tariffs were canceled in exchange.
Total access to Greenland for U.S. security.
Give me the island or I tax your cars.
Essentially, yes. Denmark and the EU avoided an economic hit, and the U.S. secured a strategic, massive landmass in the Arctic. But think about the precedent that sets. Security arrangements aren't based on long-standing treaties anymore. They're based on immediate exchange.
It turns NATO from an alliance into a marketplace.
It really emphasizes that log line again. Nothing is off the table if the price or the threat is right. Okay, let's move to scene 3. We are calling this The Developers in the Desert.
This is a jarring transition visually. We go from the glossy screens in Davos straight to the ground in Gaza.
In Davos, Jared Kushner is presenting a plan for New Gaza. And the visuals, I looked at the slide deck. If you didn't know the context, you'd think it was a luxury travel brochure for Miami or Dubai.
Right. Residential towers, data centers, seaside resorts. It's a high-tech, high-gloss vision. Ali Sheth has been tapped as the technocratic leader for this, and he announced that the Rafah crossing is opening next week. The script says, open for business.
But then the camera pans out to the reality on the ground.
And this is where the source material from Just Security and Reuters creates a split-screen effect. While these renderings of glass towers are being shown in Switzerland on the ground, Israel is establishing what they call the yellow line.
Can you explain the yellow line? Is that a border?
It's effectively a buffer zone, but a massive one. Satellite imagery shows concrete blocks being moved deep into Hamas-controlled territory. Israel is building fortifications, effectively slicing off territory. It suggests a shrinking of Gaza, not an expansion.
So the new Gaza pitch assumes this open, thriving metropolis, but the physical reality is a caged, smaller enclave with less land than before.
Exactly. The map in the presentation doesn't match the map on the ground. And there was one detail in the Just Security report that is just It's devastating. It really puts the human cost into perspective.
I read that. It stops you cold.
Yes. While these peace and development deals were being signed in luxury chalets, a baby died of hypothermia in a tent camp in Gaza.
It just highlights the disconnect. You have the screenplay of development, this fantasy being pitched by global leaders, and then you have the harsh, gritty reality of the conflict zone, where basic survival is the only plot point that matters.
It raises the question, are these development plans for the people currently living in the tents, or are they for the shareholders of that new board of peace we just talked about? It seems like the location is being developed, but the people are being overlooked.
That disconnect leads us perfectly into Scene 4. Because if we were talking about existential threats and disconnects, well, we have to look at the environment. Scene 4, the smoke in the sun.
This starts with a villain reveal, or at least a reveal of who's actually driving the crisis. Earth.org released a report this week on the carbon majors.
The numbers are staggering. Just 32 companies were responsible for half of global CO2 emissions in 2024. Half.
And here is the key characteristic of those companies. Most of them are state-owned. We're talking Saudi Aramco, Coal India, Gazprom.
I connect that back to our previous scenes. These are the same governments signing up for the Peace Board.
That's the irony or the tragedy, depending on how you look at it. 17 of the top 20 emitters are controlled by governments that actively opposed the fossil fuel phase-out at COP30. The same actors consolidating geopolitical power are the ones driving the climate crisis.
They are holding the pen on the screenplay.
They really are. And the science has gotten incredibly specific now. I was surprised to see they can now link specific heat waves to specific companies. I thought climate change was just general global warming.
It used to be. But now we have something called attribution science. We can now link 14 specific companies to causing over 50 specific heat waves, like the Pacific Northwest heat dome. It's no longer climate change in the abstract, it's corporate liability. We know exactly who heated up the atmosphere that week.
But then, enter the techno-optimist. Cut to Elon Musk speaking with Larry Fink at Davos.
And Musk delivered some dialogue that feels straight out of a sci-fi blockbuster. He said, AI will be smarter than all of humanity collectively by 2030.
And his solution to the energy problem, because we know AI uses a massive amount of power, was unique.
Put the data centers in space.
Put them in space.
Is that actually feasible, or is that just billionaire talk?
In theory, it makes sense. He argues that solar panels are 5 times more effective in space because there's no atmosphere blocking the sun, and the biggest cost of data centers is cooling.
And space is very, very cold, so you have free power and free cooling.
Exactly, but the launch costs are astronomical. However, Musk framed it as a necessity. He had this save the cat moment. You know that moment in the movie where the hero does something noble to make you like them?
Mm-hmm.
He argued we have to make life multi-planetary to preserve the tiny candle of consciousness.
It's a fascinating juxtaposition. You have the carbon majors on Earth driving heat waves that kill people, and the tech billionaires looking to the stars to save consciousness.
It reinforces this theme of a bifurcated world, those dealing with the fallout and those planning to transcend it. Which is a perfect segue to the tool that is supposed to help us transcend, AI.
Scene 5, the laboratory. We are taking you inside Meta's superintelligence labs.
This is the montage sequence of the movie, the talent war. Mark Zuckerberg has been raiding OpenAI, offering compensation packages up to $100 million.
$100 million for a researcher. That just distorts the entire market. That's athlete money.
It is, and it means only the absolute giants can compete. Startups can't pay that. And for him, it worked. After months of chaos and reorganization, Meta has announced they have breakthrough models ready for release in the first half of 2026.
But every sci-fi movie has a man versus machine theme. It's never just about the cool tech. There's always a cost.
And the IMF brought that reality check to Davos. Kristalina Georgieva stated that 40% of global jobs and 60% in advanced economies are going to be impacted by AI.
Impacted is a polite word. What does she actually mean?
She means disrupted. The question is, does impacted mean made more productive or replaced? While Zuckerberg is winning the talent war and butting the best brains for $100 million, the average workforce is looking at these stats wondering if they are about to be obsolete.
So in our screenplay, this is the looming threat in the third act. The robot uprising isn't violent, it's economic, it's about redundancy.
Exactly. It creates a class of people who own the AI and a class of people who are replaced by it.
Which brings us to our final scene. Scene 6, the bridge. We shift locations to New Delhi, India.
In a movie full of aggressive dealmakers, spies, and tech titans, India is playing a very specific character arc here.
They seem to be the only ones trying to talk to everyone.
Well, India has assumed the BRICS presidency for 2026, and their theme is building resilience. But look at the guest list. BRICS isn't just 5 countries anymore.
No, it's 11 members now, right? Including Iran, the UAE, and Egypt.
Plus 10 partner countries. It's a massive bloc representing the global south. And the key plot point here is Prime Minister Modi's strategic move. He has invited Chinese President Xi Jinping to India.
Why is that a big deal? They're neighbors?
Because India and China have been locked in a bitter border standoff for years. Soldiers have died in the Himalayas fighting with clubs and stones. Inviting Xi is a massive diplomatic gamble to lower tensions.
But at the same time, India is finalizing a trade deal with the EU.
So they are playing both sides, or rather, they are trying to balance the world. You have the transactional nature of the U.S., buy my island, join my board, and you have the electrostate dominance of China with its green tech supply chains. India is positioning itself as the bridge.
A humanity-first approach that tries to keep the global system from completely fracturing.
They are trying to prove you don't have to pick a side in this new Cold War. You can be the connective tissue. You can be the character that keeps the dialogue going when everyone else is shouting.
So let's roll the credits on this deep dive. We have a world fragmenting into blocks. Security is a subscription service. Peace is a real estate development project. And AI is coming for your job while the data centers float in space.
It's quite a film, but the screenplay isn't finished. The tension in 2026 is clearly between the deal, that short-term transactional interaction where money rules everything, and the system, the long-term stability we used to rely on.
And as the U.S. withdraws to its hemisphere and this new Board of Peace rises up.
The question for you listening to this is simple. In a world that is run like a business, who are the shareholders and who is just the product?
That is a lot to think about. Take a look at the credits, our source list, and decide which character arc you believe is going to define this year. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.